Welcome to another episode of the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast with your host, Andrew Langer.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. I'm your host, Andrew Langer. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, please, you can take us anywhere you go on one of the fine podcast platforms on which you find wherever your podcast content. If you're listening to us on one of those fine podcast platforms, you can watch and see what's going on in the studio by going to our YouTube channel, the Federal Newswire's YouTube channel. Go and check that out. As I always say, please leave a like, subscribe, hit down, leave us a rating and a review. But most importantly, let your friends and your family members' friends know that you are watching and or listening to the Lunch Hour. Now, we got a great guest today. Very excited to bring her on. Her name is Karinda Washington. She is the Executive Director for Social Impact at the Department of Homeland Security at their headquarters in Washington, D.C. In her role, she leads community engagement initiatives, particularly focusing on underserved and underrepresented communities. She oversees the If You See Something, Say Something campaign, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This campaign educates the public on recognizing signs of terrorism and violent extremism. Appointed to the SES, the Senior Executive Service, in May of 2021, she played key roles in federal affairs like Operation Allies Welcome, which resettled over 95,000 vulnerable Afghans in the U.S., and led external affairs initiatives at the Southwest Border Coordination Center and the Migration Information Center. Before her current position, Washington was the acting assistant secretary for partnership and engagement, coordinating DHS's interactions with various government and private sector faith and academic stakeholders. Washington's prior experience includes a decade with Michigan Legal Services, where she advanced affordable housing efforts. She holds a Bachelor of Science in English, Written Communication from Eastern Michigan University, a Master's of Arts in Communication from Wayne State University, and is a Harvard Kennedy School Senior Executive Fellow. Ms. Washington, thank you so very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. And so let's start here, which is a little bit about your bio and background, so folks understand where you're coming from. So you made the journey from Michigan to Washington, D.C. How did that happen? Did you ever think you were going to be doing this kind of work with the DHS?
Absolutely not, Andrew. The department wasn't created when I was in undergrad, and it was a graduate school professor who really encouraged me to check out USA Jobs. She felt like I had more to offer and I could do more in Washington, D.C. I never anticipated leaving Detroit, where my family and friends are. But as the plan would have it, I did apply on usajobs.gov, didn't know anyone at Homeland Security, to a position that said External Affairs Specialist. And I saw that position in our private sector office and thought, wow, this job is so me. There's no way I could get this job. But here we are, 13 years later, I got that job, and it has been a blessing to me and my family.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Yeah, it's a big difference being in Michigan, coming to DC. That must have been an eye-opening experience. Listen, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, because I want to talk to you about some of your outside interests later on in all of this. And I apologize for the dogs in the background.
I love dogs.
Tell us a little bit about the If You See Something, Say Something campaign.
Absolutely. So If You See Something, Say Something began as a slogan back after the horrific attacks of 9/11 by the New York Mass Transit Authority. And we knew that we could utilize that slogan to create a public awareness campaign. And so we did. And we launched the If You See Something, Say Something public awareness campaign in 2010. And it allowed us to educate the public on what suspicious activity is as it relates to terrorism and terrorism-related crime. Since that time, we know that the threat environment has evolved, and we have evolved as a campaign. We know that targeted violence and other activities, homegrown violent extremism or domestic terrorism, continues to shine a horrific light in some of our communities. And so this campaign educates the public on suspicious activity, how to report it, and that is what leads us here today to talk about how communities, individuals, corporations, community organizations can get involved.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that because we're right on the precipice of See Something, Say Something Day, which is well, actually, it's as we're recording. It's this week as this is being released because we're recording it a week in advance. So let's get into it. How can someone recognize suspicious activity, and how should people assess whether or not they should report what they see?
Absolutely. So on our site at dhs.gov/CSA, we have what is called an indicator card. It really details the 16 various signs of suspicious activity. But in our day-to-day course of life, we go about our days and sometimes we see things that are just off. Maybe it is that individual who is taking pictures of a facility and it just is not in a way that would be of a tourist typical type of photography, or it's someone trying to access a secure facility and or space within that facility. And so we know that these indicators combined could be potential signs of suspicious activity. And so we don't want to put that burden of proof on the community. What we're asking is that if something seems suspicious, if there's a behavior, not an individual, not related to gender or sex or disability or any other indicator of physical identification, but if there is something, a behavior that seems suspicious to you, report it to local authorities or local law enforcement and let them do the work to determine whether it is a viable sign of potential terrorism or terrorism related crime.
Right. Plus, you don't want somebody sort of interposing themselves in these kinds of situations. I mean, that's a
Absolutely
bad
not.
idea.
Not your job. But we
Yes.
are saying that we all have a role to play in keeping our community safe. And that is, it's that vigilance and that determination that allows us to create and continue to promote safety and security in our local communities.
Now, you got a great hashtag out there for CSAY Day, SEESAYDAY, September 25th, 2024. Why is September 25th significant? How can individuals and organizations get involved in that?
So it's our National Public Awareness Day, CSAY Day. It is an opportunity for us to raise awareness as we are here right now in Preparedness Month. We want our communities to be prepared. We want individuals to take a personal responsibility to say, you know what, I can do something right where I am. I can make a positive impact right where I am. And so for National CSAY Day on September 25th, we are asking the public to take a moment, go to dhs.gov/CSAY, educate yourself, learn about the different suspicious activity that could potentially warrant a terrorism or terrorism related crime, and then learn what you can do about it, how to report it, what your local reporting number is. Most states have a different number per state. So where do you spend time? In the DMV, I drive through 4 different states to get to work. So I need to know that if I stop off and get a coffee in one state as I'm transiting to work or transiting home, what is that phone number and how can I ensure that I am equipped and prepared? And so we have all kinds of resources on our website to help you do that, including key tag cards so that you can make sure that it's on your keychain as you're transiting.
You know, I'm doing that geography in my head, and I have not going to go into specifics about where you live, but I have an inkling I can figure that out. So let's talk about partners. How can individuals or organizations get involved outside of hashtag CSAY Day, or how can they partner with the campaign down the road?
Yes, so you can partner today. Whether you are an individual looking to get involved and maybe just educate your friend circle or educate your household, we have resources available on our site, all the way up to major corporations and sports arenas and government facilities and or commercial facilities, large sporting events, outdoor events. We know that all of us have to come together in order to protect our local communities and to educate. And so those partner resources are available on our site. We also do customized materials. So maybe you want to have back of the house materials for your employees so they know and are informed on how to report suspicious activity. But anyone can participate. We have downloadable materials on our site, as well as local governments can pull down for their state. We call it a state bundle. So because I'm from Michigan, I'm going to shout out MichTip, but you go to that Michigan bundle and you download it and you're able to put up those posters where you live, work, or spend time.
So this has been going on, as you said, since 2010. So year 14 here. Let's talk about some of the success stories to highlight the impact of public vigilance through the "If You See Something, Say Something" campaign.
Yes, so we know that individuals, it really comes down to a local event. No matter what crises we may hear about in the news, it started local first before it became national news. And I think about an example that just happened in April. An everyday citizen, a friend of someone who was intent on causing harm at a local mall down in Fort Smith, Arkansas, said something. Something just didn't seem right with my friend. Something just didn't seem right with this text message that I received. And so I'm going to call local authorities because it's better that I do that than to potentially see what could happen from there. And because of that tip, law enforcement were able to apprehend that individual who did intend to cause harm and was later arrested. We all can prevent these incidents from happening. And I just reflect on that just a few months ago that at Central Mall in Fort Smith, that some friend said, you know what, something's off with my friend. And I'd rather err on the side of caution and say something than not, and a tragedy could unfold. So we're thankful for everyday citizens taking that personal responsibility to say, I need to speak up when something just seems off.
Sometimes you got to go with your gut. If something seems hinky, you gotta move it forward. So as we focus, so next week, of course, or this week, as I said, when we release it,
yes,
the episode, September 25th, CSA Day, as we continue to focus on that and national security awareness all through the year. What do you want listeners to take away from the campaign?
We all have a role to play. We are in a heightened threat environment, and sometimes that just seems like a buzzword when you keep hearing it over and over and over again.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we keep hearing about incidents over and over again. So no matter if we're in an academic setting or in a commercial setting or just transiting through our local airports or train and rail or in our cars, we have activity unfolding every single day. And so the takeaway today is educate yourself on the signs of suspicious activity and learn how to report it. And we have plenty of resources on our site in order to do that. You are valuable. We collectively as a community can come together and unite on one simple purpose: to protect our local community, to protect ourselves, and to look out for individuals that we care about and even individuals that we do not know, because those resources allow us to be equipped and empowered to make impact. We will have a public awareness webinar on September 24th, so you can learn more. So go to dhs.gov/CSA to learn how you can get equipped and be empowered to make a positive impact in your local community.
As they used to say at the end of every G.I. Joe cartoon episode, now you know, and knowing is half the battle. That's certainly, I think, the case here. So listen, I teed this up when we were sort of talking about this interview. I like for my viewers and listeners to have a better understanding of who the people are that I'm talking to. And I was originally conceiving of doing a podcast that was focused exclusively on the outside interests of the people I'm talking to, right? Because all too frequently, people who are watching from well outside of DC, they think, well, it's just somebody in DC and this is their life. But everybody has outside interests. Let me ask you this. So when you're not doing this work, when you are, 4 states away, what are you up to in your spare time? If you have spare time, what would we find you doing?
Well, Andrew, if I read correctly, international relations is in your background.
Oh, yeah.
And I have truly evolved in that space. Domestic security has been, of course, at the height of my career since I've been at DHS, but we know that our boundaries extend beyond the boundaries of the U.S. And so in my personal time, I've been exposing young people to international affairs. I took my first group of young people from my hometown of Detroit to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia last year, just so they can see beyond your neighborhood, beyond your 4 blocks, what is the world contributing to? What is this global society? And so now these young people have a different perspective, and one has already gone to South Africa with his sports team, but it took planting that seed. And so I hope that my life's work will be committed to opening doors for that next generation, for them too to see themselves in this national security space.
You know, it's one of those things where you really do have to spend time, even just having a minor conversation with somebody who's not from where you grew up or where where you live now. There's a professor at George Mason University who wrote an essay a year ago about driving 50 miles in any direction and having a conversation with somebody. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, my wife does medical missions over in sub-Saharan Africa, and just took our daughter over for one of those trips. And then you come back changed. I know every time I travel abroad for work, you come back changed. I mean, I guess that sums it up. So how do folks find out more about the good work you guys are doing? How do they find out more about the CSAY Day campaign?
Yes, please go to dhs.gov/CSAY. All of the information is there on CSAY Day, which is September 25th, the public awareness webinar on September 24th, and then how you can partner with the campaign year round, dhs.gov/CSAY and hashtag CSAY Day on September 25th. We're just so thankful for the opportunity to share today, Andrew.
Great. Well, Karinda Washington, thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That has been yet another episode of The Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. As I've said at the beginning of the show, if you're listening to us on one of the fine podcast platforms, you can always watch us on our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can take The Lunch Hour with you wherever you want to go and listen to us on just about every fine podcast platform there is. Let your friends and family members know. Subscribe, leave us a like, leave us a review. I am Andrew Langer, your host. Enjoy the rest of your lunch.
This has been the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast, hosted by Andrew Langer. Check out the Federal Newswire's family of websites, as well as their social media stream.